We are in Istanbul, in Turkey, attending PATA Annual Summit 2025. And next to me, I have Peter Semone, who is the chairman of PATA, the Pacific Asia Travel Association. Thank you for being with me.
Nice to see you again, Theo.
I'm
Always
very
great to see
happy
you.
to enjoy one more of your amazing summits.
Thank you.
So, before I come to the summit and what discussions we have here,
Yeah.
the day earlier, you had your board meeting and you presented a new mission and a new vision for PATA.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, first of all, what makes you decide that you need to change the old one to a new?
Yeah. Nice to see you, Theo, and it's great to be here in Istanbul. And indeed, we revamped our vision and our mission. And I think part of it was, I always say that when you get in an elevator, and I have to do this often representing PATA, sometimes when I travel, that people will ask, well, what is PATA? And so I've got a few seconds, maybe a minute to tell them. And so I can say Pacific Asia Travel Association. It's been around since 1951, but then it gets a little bit murky. And by the time I tried to finish what the previous vision and mission was, the elevator's already reached where it has to go. So the point is that we need a better elevator pitch, and I think that we need to be, in this day and age when people are distracted all the time, you can barely talk to, when you go to a restaurant, you see people couples are at a restaurant and they're both on the telephone. There's a real lack of attention span compared to when we were younger. And I think, therefore, we need to find really punchy and bold statements that gets people's attention. So the vision is looking towards, we're not talking about our association as much as we're talking about our region and how we want to be an instigator in terms of creating what we're calling a meaningful tourism economy for the Asia-Pacific region. And we're going to do that through collaboration. We're going to do it through adaptability. We're going to do it through innovation. And we're going to do it through really looking after what we call the tourism assets, the tourism economy assets. Because at the end of the day, Theo, we are in a little bit of a crisis in terms of our industry. And I was always very optimistic. Right after COVID, everybody kept talking about, we're going to build back better. We're going to make it better. We're going to improve, because before COVID in 2019, we reached the highest numbers ever, but we could already see destinations starting to deteriorate from over-tourism, economy or destinations suffering from trash that they couldn't manage, and a lot of tourism management issues. And we came out of COVID, and then we turned on the marketing valve again, and we just decided to get back to our old routines, which was we're going to market. And then all of a sudden the scale sort of tipped more towards marketing and less towards destination management, and it's deja vu all over again. But this time we don't have, I hope we don't have a pandemic, but we don't have anything to put the brakes on. And I'm deeply concerned about, forget about worrying about the world, but I want to worry about the Asia-Pacific region. We want to worry about it, and it's a very fragile part of the world. It's fragile from a cultural perspective. There's a lot of poverty still in Asia. There's a lot of vulnerable communities, and there's a lot of precious cultural heritage. Not to mention the natural environment that is there. So we have a lot of precious culture and heritage. We have a lot of vulnerable communities. A lot of Asia has gone through this tremendous transition in 30 years, and tourism has been this tool for development. It's been looked at as a very positive force, and it's been looked at a way to create jobs. It's been a way to for individuals to become entrepreneurs, micro, small enterprises. But we're sort of in this moment now where we've almost reached the tipping point where you can start to question, is tourism a positive force or is tourism becoming a negative force? Is it going to create an existential issue for our region?
I'm very surprised because you mentioned that on your opening remarks also, that we start listening voices presenting that tourism is not as good as we thought it was.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people start speaking, as you said, negatively about tourism. We have over-tourism in certain places, or tourism is affecting the environment. It's
right.
not so much sustainable as we were thinking. We have to do more. What is happening there?
Yeah, I think we all need a bit of a reality check. And I think we've been, the tourism economy is an issue of supply and demand. Mm-hmm. And I think for perhaps too long, we've been focusing on the demand side. And think about that. Think about the NTOs in Asia and the amount of money that they've spent on campaigns, the amount of money that they've spent to get business. And I think we've done it kind of in a little bit of a lackadaisical way. We just said more business, more business. Which brings me to another really key point that I mentioned yesterday in my presentation. And this is maybe at a more global perspective, is I think that shame on us as a tourism industry for not coming up with better metrics about our industry. Mm-hmm. And what I mean there, Theo, is we still talk about and compare your destination versus my destination. The first thing is, how many visitors do you get? And you'll ask me the same thing. Actually, that's immaterial. It's actually a nonsensical thing to ask about. And then maybe we'll dig deeper into more murky waters, what I would say, which is, how long are your guests staying? Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Overnight. It really depends on your immigration authority, and then what's the per diem spend? And the per diem spend sometimes is, we do surveys at the airport and we ask you, Theo, when you leave, how much did you spend? So you're probably going to say you spent more money than you actually did, or maybe you don't even remember how much money you spent. But is that really the way to run a massive industry that has, $10 trillion of value, offers 350 million jobs, and now we're at 1.5 billion visits a year? We need to be a bit more sophisticated. And we talk about how we're technology and how we're moving into this new era, but we're still operating in the 1970s. So I'm deeply concerned that it's all going to catch up to us or threaten us, and we're going to naively sit there and say, Theo, what happened? How did all of a sudden go so terribly wrong? And I think that the message as a tourism thought leader that I want to pass on is that we really need to think about these things much more seriously. And that's kind of why this notion of meaningful tourism, about, I use the phrase, and you probably heard me refer to it yesterday, a good place to live is a good place to visit. True. And maybe it's time for us to start taking, as the first instant from a government perspective, let's worry about our citizens first and ensuring that they have a good atmosphere to live in. And then let's figure out how we can cater and how many tourists we can cater to. And I think they're complementary. But I think instead of putting the visitor first, we have to put the community first, and then try to create that balance. And I know it sounds really idealistic, but you know what, Theo, at some point, if we want to improve and we want to sustain our industry, we're going to have to start thinking out of the box and doing things differently.
On the other hand, I mean, the more we manage the societies around the world, the more they manage, to increase and the quality of living of their citizens, people are going to travel even more, or more people are going to travel. So the numbers most probably are going to increase.
Yes. Because
now traveling is not a luxury experience
it's a
anymore.
Right.
It's a right. It's, I need to travel. Okay, it's not like in the past.
No.
How are we going to manage all these tourism flows that probably are going to go higher than they are now?
Yeah. I wish that I had the exact answer to that. I think the one thing I would say is the first step is that we have to start you have to admit that you have a problem before you can address the problem. And I think that one of the things that PATA is trying to do on behalf of the region is really communicate that we have a problem. There's an issue that we better deal with. So I think the first thing is creating that awareness. I think the governments are so challenged now. They have so many different challenges and issues to deal with. So how do we get this idea of a more meaningful tourism engagement across the governments? And it's not only ministries of tourism. There has to be more of a, tourism is everybody's business within the government. It has to cover all of the different elements of government. I think the thing that there's a couple of, when you look at, for instance, climate change and the impact on the environment as a result of tourism, for example, aviation is clearly the biggest issue. What I see in Asia, and I have great admiration for China. I go to China quite often, and some of the things that they're doing in terms of high-speed rail and alternative forms of transporting people from one city to another, and even their ability, because they have such a huge domestic market, 1.4 billion travelers, and I think it's an incredible amount of domestic travel that happens, particularly during COVID and after COVID. You see a lot more Chinese, and as things exacerbate, unfortunately, geopolitically, the Chinese are very, very proud people. So they're moving around a lot, they're traveling. But my point is that the Chinese have figured out how to do mass crowd management very well at tourism attractions. They use technology in a very creative way. They do have carrying capacity, so they say only so many people can come to this particular attraction on a day, and so I think those are some of the things that we have to do. But I think there also has to be more. I think there has to be more dialogue between what I would call the three key parties. And so the first most important one is civil society. There needs to be a lot more dialogue between the tourism industry and civil society leaders. There needs to be more communication between, public-private partnership, but certainly industry. Industry sometimes gets very frustrated because the government isn't listening to them. And a lot of destinations still have this top-down approach. We really need to have a bottom-up, and bottom starts first with the community. It's their home, after all. Then it's industry, and then it's government. And how do we create a better ecosystem of understanding between those parties? I think that's another way of doing it. But there's more questions than there are answers at this point, and I think that's the reason, Theo, that I'm really happy that PATA's made some bold statements, because let's once and for all start to ask the difficult questions, and then maybe together. There's so much opportunity for innovation with all of the technology that exists, with all of the smart thinking that exists, and with all of the ability for us to maybe tap into the experiences of other industries that have had other challenges. There's so much opportunity, and I still think that the tourism industry operates a bit in a silo sometimes, and it's actually shocking, because we're actually the most externalized, if you would, industry, because we're so outward thinking. We have to connect all of these different destinations, but at the same time we're so narrow-minded in the way that we do it.
Do you have the feeling that part of the solution could also be probably the tourists themselves? Because one of the trends that we are listening is that the tourists are now looking for experiences.
Yes.
Especially Gen Z,
yes,
which is the new wave of tourists are coming to every destination. They are not willing to travel on a mass scale. They don't want to travel in groups. They want to travel as individuals, and they want to have experiences as mostly. So you have the feeling that probably even the consumer will contribute to the solution of this issue?
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that in the end, the consumer will be the solution. The demand side will start demanding more responsible destination management. Our generation, we're almost old folks now, Theo, but our generation, look, we grew up in a different era. I remember typing my papers on a typewriter in college.
Same.
I mean, and I say that to my kids, and they say, "What's a typewriter?"
Exactly.
Or they see one perhaps in a museum, right? And we grew up. I mean, the telephone was hanging off the wall, but so it's such a different world that, let's say, the 50 plus travelers grew up in and are used to, versus my kids. My kids, for example, are in their 19 and 21, and they have a totally different perspective, and I think it sort of cascades over to them feeling very responsible about. They're worried, and I think I learned, when I listen to my kids and I listen to younger people, they are worried about their future, because our generation and a little bit older than us did a good job of messing things up, and so yes, I think that the younger generation will demand it. And interestingly, Theo, I think that transition is going to happen perhaps faster than we expected, because pretty soon we probably won't even want to travel anymore, because we've traveled so much in our lives, and retirement for us is maybe just sitting at home and not traveling. But I think, you're going to find very much that this generational shift, the real consumers, I think that they will demand a lot more of that, and it'll make a big difference.
We are on the second day of the conference, of the summit. What would you say are the key points, or what attracted your attention? What new did you learn? What information you got?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to for all these events, the first thing is that it's really nice to come to Istanbul, and it's really nice to come to Turkey. It's always interesting to see different cultures and different people and different traditions, and to receive the hospitality that Pata always receives. And that's the reason we travel, actually. We can't forget that. We travel because we want to experience what different cultures and people live like, and obviously their surroundings. And Istanbul is a really beautiful place. In terms of the events, it was really interesting because I was given the opportunity to kick off the event and make a keynote speech about meaningful tourism, and to be very critical, some of the things that we've already talked about, to be very critical about tourism. And I was really pleased to see a very positive response. I think that there's a real willingness to sort of hear these things. I think this morning there was a session on various data technology providers, and the amount of research that's out there. I was speaking to a gentleman who was talking about halal tourism, and they've done very significant research in that area. And then MasterCard has done wonderful things, and TripAdvisor and OAG. And so I think I'm very impressed by the, before I was saying that we're in the 1970s metrics of measuring tourism, but at the same time, the technology companies and everything, they're providing so much interesting information.
Indeed.
And I think the disconnect is that it's all being used for marketing. How can we shift it so it's not only about marketing, but it's also about destination management? So I'm impressed by the amount of research that's been done about the tourism value chain. There was a really great discussion also about the Istanbul airport, and it was actually very scary to hear. They have like 1.4 million square meters now that they're operating, and they plan to perhaps double that in the next 10 to 20 years because they see so much future demand. Which then again raises the question: How are we? Somebody actually said that airports are just they're shopping malls that have airplanes parked next to them, right? And so an airport could be sustainable, but then the minute that the people get on the airplane, then it's all changed. So I also enjoy very much. I think that there's. It's always fun to come to a Pata event because you're Greek, and I've met Ukrainians and Japanese and Koreans, and you really feel like that's the great thing about tourism. It's such a global environment, and you come to a Pata event and you meet 25 nationalities in the first hour you're at an event, And so that always really strikes me. And the other thing is we were talking about young people before on the demand side, but also I see there's a lot more young people that are smart young people that are engaged in tourism. And I think we in order for us to improve, we need to continue to engage those people. But I'm optimistic because there are some real young go-getters out there that are
True.
enthusiastic about the industry.
You are actually optimistic because earlier you mentioned that we are in a little bit of a crisis.
Yes.
And that was a very optimistic approach, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Because after COVID, we start having wars, we start having, trade wars, we have
That's right.
many things.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, we see now there is, for good or for bad, there is a trade war, let's say,
Yeah.
between US and China and Europe and this and that.
Yeah.
That creates some issues.
Yes.
That affecting tourism also.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you if you see an opportunity now that, let's say, US and China, they are not doing very well currently, maybe this will change very soon. Is there any opportunity between Asia and Europe to start developing some more close bonds, especially regarding tourism?
It's a really interesting question. And I think the first thing that we all have to keep in mind is that the leadership in America, it changes from one day to the next in terms of what the ideas are and what the policies are. And that's just the nature of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And on behalf of the American people, I do apologize for some of the misunderstandings.
It's okay.
For some of the misunderstandings that are created there. So I think there's definitely an opportunity, a huge opportunity that's been presented as a result of the unfortunate shenanigans that are happening. And I'll give you an example of where I've been engaged in sort of the Europe-Asia connection. And I have to say, it's led by the Chinese. And I'm a big fan of China, and I'm a big fan of how they talk about people-to-people exchange,
mm-hmm.
and they talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, and they talk about how to connect. And the Chinese are very committed to the Chinese civilization and to the history of what the Chinese have done over the years. And what I'm referring to is the Silk Road. And I've been to a couple events. In fact, I was in Istanbul, I think it was last September in 2024. And I was invited by the Chinese to come to participate in a conference about the Silk Road. And Istanbul played a really significant role in there. And there were so many European countries and representatives from different places that were there to really discuss about this historical linkage between Asia and Europe, mm-hmm. and how that can be part of the modern day way of business and the opportunity that you're speaking about. I definitely think that there's a real opportunity, and as they say in China, for every crisis there's an opportunity, and I think that that's a massive opportunity, and I do very much foresee much closer relations, and actually they're connected. If you think, and Istanbul is a really magical place because Istanbul is a little bit where Asia and Europe meet.
Europe, yeah.
Yeah, but it's really linked. And again, I was talking about the rail before. It's only a matter of time, but before there'll be high-speed rail service from Beijing to Paris, and that's going to create a different element. So I think that definitely Asia will start to look a lot more to the West and maybe not look to the Pacific Ocean for a while, just because that makes more sense in terms of friendship. It makes more sense in terms of economic gain, and it makes, and the one thing that I always say, Theo, is that Asia can actually survive on its own in terms of tourism. 80% of the arrivals in Asia originate from Asia. And they have this thing called the UC Circle, which is in Yunnan. I've actually been to UC. It's a nice little town, but if you do a concentric circle of about, I think it's 4,000 kilometers, more than half of the world's population lives there. So I think that from a demand side, from an emerging economy side, Asia has so much potential. And I think one of the things that I would love to see PATA do more of is to be instrumental in bringing Europe and Asia together. And I think that there's more that we can do in terms of trade missions. There's more that we can do in terms of cooperation. So yes,
that would be
absolutely,
very interesting.
Absolutely. It's a big opportunity.
Next year is an important year for PATA, 75 years.
Yeah.
And you celebrate the 75 years in Korea for the next summit.
That's right.
What can we expect for the next year to happen?
I'm so excited. The Koreans are great hosts, and they're always so proud to be able to host an organization like PATA and their annual summit and our annual summit. 75 years. I mean, we were founded in 1951, and it was a couple of American GIs that had been at World War I in the Pacific Islands, actually. So we started off as the Pacific Area Travel Association, and all those dots in the Pacific Ocean, where that was the vision, was to help them to bring tourism to those islands, to be able to help them economically, especially in the post-World War II environment. So here we are, we fast forward 75 years. It's a significant birthday or anniversary for PATA. Definitely we want to celebrate our legacy. 75 years is a long time. As I said, we started in the Pacific area, and no, it wasn't Pacific Asia, because Asia was really, most of the countries that you'll see in Asia, many of them didn't even have independence in 1951, or had just become independent. So tourism was way off of their radar. And over the years, we've developed, and we've even changed our name, modified our name to become the Pacific Asia instead of Area Travel Association. So there's a lot of history that we need to share. We did some really significant things in different parts of the region. Two that come to mind, we used to have these things called task forces, and we don't do it as much anymore, but there was a task force that we did in Chiang Mai. Imagine Chiang Mai, you and I both live in Thailand or have lived in Thailand. Chiang Mai had no tourism, and it was called, at the time I forgot, but not TAT, but it was another institution, I think TOT or something like that, and they asked PATA to help them to bring a group of volunteer experts to actually come up with a plan for Chiang Mai, and they followed through with it. And of course now Chiang Mai, has prospered a lot from tourism. Macau is another place. Macau had zero tourism, and again, it was a task force that came together that really helped define the direction that Macau should go in. Especially in Macau, we talk about East meets West. It's another example of Europe and Asia and the Portuguese heritage along with the Chinese heritage and how they're able to blend together. So there's magnificent stories, not only of places but of people. I think of one of the people that I'm most fond of in my time at PATA. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, is Alwyn Zeka. Alwyn Zeka really inspired me a lot, and so and Chuck G, and there's all of these incredible legacy names of the pioneers of travel in Asia and the Pacific. That I think we also want to celebrate those people. So we want to celebrate accomplishments. We want to celebrate those pioneers, and also I think we want to continue to carry on this meaningful mission that we're on, that we've sort of launched here in Istanbul, but really maybe bring it to another level. For example, we are talking about working with a number of partners to develop a PATA index. So, and it comes back to this: how can we measure the meaningfulness of tourism at a destination level, and sort of be able to give a bit of a report card about where you're doing things well, where things are not so well.
That'll be interesting.
Benchmarking against other destinations, and like they have the Boston Consulting Group has they have the quadrants, and they have the stars and the cows, and so maybe what we'll be able to do. Obviously, this is just a dream at this point, but to actually be able to show destinations where they sit based on a number of different criteria. So I'm hoping that we can sort of begin to launch that idea to a next level. I would like to see us do that. And I think the other thing is that the Koreans will also, it's an important time for them to, PATA had an event in the same place we're going to in 1979. And it was actually linked with APEC. And this one's also, they're having APEC this year and they're having us next year. So I think it's very important for the Koreans. They also want to celebrate that long relationship that they've had with PATA. So it's going to be a great event. Sometimes I can't believe it. We made it to 75 years. It's quite an accomplishment, especially in this day and age when associations it's not an easy business. And it's very hard because their attention is pulled in so many different directions, and there's so much, when you talk about networking, which we've always said is the most important part of PATA, people find that they can do networking digitally, they can do it many other ways. So yeah, I'm proud that we've made the first 75 years, and inshallah we'll make another 75 years.
Wishing you years for the next 75 at least.
But I don't feel,
we're not going to be
bad
here.
news for you, I don't think we're going to be here.
Anyway, we will watch from somewhere.
Exactly, we can watch from up there somewhere and say, hey, we had a great conversation, and look, this is what happened.
Nice, so I'm looking forward for the next summit then in Korea, and see how we are going to go towards meaningful tourism.
Thank you so much, Theo. As always, it's really nice to speak to you. Really always enjoy it. And I'll see you in Bangkok soon, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.